Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Life West Leadership Line. Today, I have a friend of yours and mine and a great friend of chiropractic who's doing phenomenal things all over the world, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Hey, Joe. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dr. Ron. Happy to be with you as always.
Joe, I have to tell you something, man. You know, I know you're all over the place. You're the hardest guy to track down. I don't know if you get this, but when people call me, the first thing they say is, where are you in the world today? That's what they say. But with you, I want to say, what planet are you on? Because, man, you log more miles than anybody I freaking know. And I love you for that because you're spreading a great message. So what, brother, let's jump into it, man. Our viewers, you know, our listeners kind of know what the leadership line is. Joe graduated from Life Chiropractic College in 1985. I believe he went to Rutgers University from New Jersey, and just a brilliant man, philosophically sound, and just really has a heart of gold. So, Joe, let's talk about it. Let's talk about health and wellness. I want to get into some of your research you're doing, things like that. So share with us, talk about health and wellness. Tell me what you're seeing these days.
Well, I mean, you know, I think the number one indicator for people's level of health has to do with stress. And as you know, stress is when the brain and body are knocked out of homeostasis. We have an innate mechanism, you know, there's an innate intelligence, as chiropractors know, that the stress response is when the body does its best to return back to order. And it turns out that most stresses end up as psychological or emotional stress, and 75 to 90% of every person that walks into a healthcare facility in the Western world walks in because of psychological or emotional stress. So, you know, if there's three types of stress, physical, chemical, and emotional, then there's got to be three types of balance, physical, chemical, and emotional. And what we found out is that you can take care of those first two, you know, getting somebody chiropractically in balance. You can have them do yoga, you can have them do Pilates, you could have them do massage, acupuncture. They could eat the right diet. They could, you know, take the right supplements, do the right things to chemically balance their body. But if that emotional component isn't addressed, then you see a lot of repatterning in people's structure and their nervous system. And so my research is to demystify the process of being able to suppress the educated mind, to lower the lights in the thinking neocortex. And the whole purpose of meditation is to get beyond the analytical mind. And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. So 95% of who we are is a set of memorized behaviors and emotional reactions, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions. So then is there a way to get into the operating system and begin to rewrite a program, to begin to write a code and rehearse a new way of being and begin to install new neurological hardware? And with practice and repetition, that hardware becomes a software program, and all of a sudden we start seeing very significant biological changes. So in the last 5-10 years or so, I've assembled a team of researchers and scientists and to really demystify the process, that to prove to people that they're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of their lives, or they're not doomed by their genes, that in fact that we are marvels of adaptability and change. So then after 10 years of research, we came down to a very clear understanding what to do and why to do it. And I think if you understand the what and the why, the how gets easier. And I think science has become kind of the contemporary language of mysticism. I think science is what demystifies the mystical. And if you start talking tradition or culture, or you start talking religion, you're going to divide a community. And yet, when you give people the right kind of information, and they can repeat it and understand it and set up the conditions and the environment for them to actually practice, and they understand that it's a formula, no different than a golf swing or dancing the salsa or learning how to cook Indonesian cuisine. It just takes practice. So we have a team of neuroscientists and geneticists, and we have a team of biologists. We partner with University of California, San Diego, and their research team there, and we're measuring biological changes to see, once you get beyond educated mind and you become conscious and you begin to interact with that intelligence, that innate intelligence, and give it a plan, a template, and then surrender and get out of the way and allow that autonomic nervous system to begin to function, we have seen dramatic changes in autonomic function. We're talking about significant changes in stage 4 cancers or MS or lupus. There's a dramatic change. And the premise is really simple. And that is your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. Yeah. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So the present personality who's listening to this show has created the present personal reality called their life. Well, it makes sense. If you want to create a new life, you want to create a new personal reality, that means you got to change your personality. And I think most people try to create a new personal reality without changing who they are. Exactly. And so then what is the formula to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts? To notice how you act, how you speak, how you behave, to pay attention to how you're feeling. And the act of observing those states of mind and body, Dr. Ron, means you're no longer the program, because when you're the program, you're unconscious. So the first step to change is becoming conscious of that unconscious process. Turns out the word meditation literally means to become familiar with. Now, that's lighting a match in a dark place, and that means then when you sit down to create something new in your life, you're going to come up against all the things that have to change in order for you to arrive there. So that lighting that match in the dark place is all of a sudden coming up against thoughts like, I can't, it's too hard, I'll never change, it's my ex's fault, or, you complain, you blame, you make excuses, you feel sorry for yourself. These are all unconscious programs. You live for 20 years of feeling guilt, but you don't know it's guilt because you feel that way for the last 20 years.
It becomes normal.
It becomes normal, right?
It becomes you.
So then the premise is once you become conscious of those unconscious states of mind and body, so conscious and so familiar with them, you wouldn't go unconscious of them in your waking day. Now you're out of the bleachers and you're on the playing field. So then the next fundamental question is, if meditation is to become familiar with, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? And if I pay attention and I have intention, our research shows you begin to install new circuits in your brain. Keep repeating it, keep firing and wiring, and that hardware becomes a software program. And all of a sudden you hear the thought in your head that says you can. Anything's possible. There's nothing magical there. You installed the circuitry. So then if you could close your eyes and say, who do I want to be when I open my eyes, when I start my day? What behaviors do I want to demonstrate? The act of mentally rehearsing who you want to be and going through the actions in your mind when you're truly present and truly focused, the brain doesn't know the difference between the real life experience and what you're imagining. So then you install more neurological circuits in your brain, because typically the neocortex is a record of the past. Now you're priming the brain to the future. If you keep repeating it, the hardware, by firing and wiring, becomes a software program, and all of a sudden you start behaving like a happy person. Well, there's no magic there. You actually prime the brain for those behaviors. And now here's the tough part. Can you teach your body emotionally what that wonderful practice, what that wonderful life, what that wonderful future could be like, and not wait for the event to happen so that you can feel joy or feel freedom or feel love or abundant? That's the old model of reality, of waiting for something outside of us to finally change, to take away our emptiness or lack. The deal is that when you begin to condition your body emotionally into the future, now you're no longer living by cause and effect. You begin to cause an effect. And so when people trade limited emotions like fear or anxiety or frustration or resentment for elevated emotions like gratitude and freedom, it's that heart-centered state that begins to cause the body to literally emit information and energy. And that energetic release we have measured begins to cause the brain to begin to change, and it gets more creative. And so people then, when they truly change how they think, how they act, and how they feel, and they become so familiar with those thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that they begin to create a new personality, well, then it makes sense. And if they're diseased, the disease exists in the old personality.
That's right.
They're literally somebody else. They're not visualizing anything going away. They're understanding that the stronger the emotion they feel, the more they're upregulating genes. Well, why? Because it says the environment signals the gene. Everybody understands that. But the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion. So if you're living by the same emotions every single day, your body is so objective, it doesn't know the difference between the real life experience that's creating the emotion that you're fabricating by thought alone. So you're headed for a genetic destiny because the body's not getting any new information. Begin to have people understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and they assign meaning to what they're doing. They start suppressing genes for MS, suppressing genes for leukemia, and start upregulating genes for health and immune regulation and IgA and all the wonderful antibodies that begin to restore and repair the body. And so we've seen dramatic changes. I can tell you right now that you can absolutely change the way your brain works. You could absolutely make your heart more balanced. You could lengthen your life. You could upregulate genes, 8 different genes that have to do with cancer suppression and tumor cell growth, to grow new neurons in your brain, to diminish oxidative stress, to stimulate stem cells to go to damaged tissues and repair them. Research shows that you can do that in 4 days. And so I think this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. It's a time in history to know how. And common people around the world are doing the uncommon, and it's like a 4-minute mile. Somebody stands on the stage in an event and says, hey, I've been dealing with this Parkinson's disease for 20 years, and I just had a moment, and now I don't have any tremors. Everybody leans in when they see that.
But then they say, well, it was a misdiagnosis, or it's all in your head. And we go, of course it's in your head. It's in your brain. And it's what you're talking about. But Joe, when you said some key words that are unbelievable, and not unbelievable, but they are believable, very believable. And they were so in line with chiropractic. First of all, you talked about emotions, right? And we know Dee always talked about the emotion being one of the biggest causes of subluxation, right? And if Dee could have heard what you just said, it would have defined what he was saying. He never was able to say it like that, of course, Then you talked about adaptability, because we are adaptable, creatures, and that's what our nervous system does for us, right? And that's one of the biggest proponents of our biggest components of our philosophy. And then you talked about neuroplasticity, right? The repetition. And it just took me back to, I don't know if you've been seeing the Michael Jordan show that's been on TV, the Last Dance, the 10 documentary series. No,
I've read about the comments about it. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to see it if you have a TV at some point, or you'll catch it somewhere. But, the guy just programmed his mind. Like, it doesn't matter how he did it, but he just started thinking. He would get his mind into a certain shape. Or before an athlete, as in the Olympics, when they're doing this kind of stuff down the track with headphones, they're not listening to music per se, but they're just programming, right? And being able to do that stuff and getting their minds right. And God, what you said was just so full of phenomenal stuff. How we're not victims we're victims of ourselves, right? We're not victims of anything out there. We can change anything we want to change.
Well, let's talk about the definition of a victim. If I approached somebody listening to this show and I'd say, what's wrong with you? And, I'm in a bad mood today. Well, why are you in a bad mood? Well, because of my coworker, because of my staff, because of my stats, because of the news, because of my ex. What they're really saying is, unconsciously now in a program, that something outside of me, some person or circumstance, is controlling the way I feel and the way I think. And anything that's controlling the way you feel and think makes you victim to your environment. Now, that unconscious program then means that a person who's living by that every day will be more susceptible to any condition in their environment, because it's their response to the environment that is squandering the amount of energy they need to heal. So then in order for them to heal, then they have to turn the battleship around and say, well, wait a second. I could complain. That would be normal and natural. I have 1,000 reasons to be unhappy. But instead of allowing my environment to control how I think and feel, what if how I think and feel can produce an effect in my environment? Now all of a sudden, the game changes, because you are going to inhibit those thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. And in the moment where, whether it's justified or valid or not, for you to be angry, frustrated, fearful, sad, pain, whatever, to no longer allow your environment to control it, and you begin to self-regulate, and that's adaptability. And we teach people that you could actually develop this skill. And when you do it properly, and you get back into that kind of heart and brain coherence, you save yourself from going unconscious for the remainder of the day and running some type of program. So it feels unnatural in the beginning because basically the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did before. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, buckle up, because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. You are going to leave known territory and you're stepping into the unknown. Now, most people, their habituations and their conditioning of remembering something from the past, and that memory is just thoughts of different people and circumstances, of different things at certain times and places, tattooed in the recesses of their gray matter. So the moment they think of their problems, they're thinking in the past. But every one of those past experiences has an emotion associated with it. So they start off in the morning thinking about their problems, and the moment they feel unhappy, now their body's in the past, because thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body. And it's that feeling then that drives their thoughts, that produces more of the feeling, and their state of being is literally in the past. So the moment you decide to make a different choice, you're stepping out of known territory, because that conditioning process is conditioning the body to subconsciously become the mind of that emotion. And now the body's literally in the past. So when you step out into the unknown, and now game is on, because you're going to hear the voices and you're going to hear the chatter and you're going to hear the sub-vocalizations for one reason, because the body emotionally is trying to convince you to think consistent with that emotion. So you make the same choice, you demonstrate the same behavior, you create the same experience to reaffirm that same emotion. Then people say, well, this feels right. No, that feels familiar. So going from the old self to the new self, there is a neurological, biological, chemical, hormonal, genetic death of the old self. And crossing that river of change from the old self to the new self is what we admire about great people, whether it's Michael Jordan or William Wallace or Mahatma Gandhi or Didi Palmer. I mean, they just took a chance in possibility. Some people would rather cling to suffering and to unhappiness than to take a chance in the unknown. So then stress then becomes the one thing that people rely on in their outer environment for an arousal. And the arousal of fear, the arousal of aggression, the arousal of anger, the arousal of pain is really taking the body's energy and mobilizing it for some threat in the outer environment, real or imagined. Well, short term, no problem there. But if you turn on the stress response and you can't turn it off, now you're headed for a disease.
Right.
Because no organism can live in emergency mode for that extended period of time. So what's the side effect? From a neurological standpoint, you are going to see a lot of incoherence in the thinking neocortex. In fact, the arousal causes a person to try to predict the future based on the past. So now they're overly analytical. And our research shows when you get overly analytical, 100% of the time, you're going to make your brain worse, without a doubt.
Wow.
You're going to drive it further into those elevated high beta states. Same thing happens. You're sitting in traffic and you're frustrated, you're impatient, you can't run, you can't fight, you can't hide. So in a sense, biologically, you're stepping on the gas and the brake. But what happens to the heart during the sympathetic response? It's beating, but now you're not using that energy. So then the arteries of the heart constrict, and now you're pushing against the closed system, and the heart becomes incoherent, and energy literally leaves the brain and heart. And now, in a sense, the hormones of stress draw from our field of energy and turn it into chemistry. We become more matter, less energy, more particle, less wave, and now we feel separate from everyone and everything, because those chemicals heighten the senses to narrow our focus on everything material. We become materialists. So then there's no time to dream in survival. Why would you dream? It's not a time to dream. It's not a time to create. So people spend 70+% of their time living in this aroused state. And so they don't believe in a new future, because if they can't see it, smell it, taste it, hear it, feel it, it doesn't exist. So then suppressed neocortical function, consciousness drops right out of the thinking neocortex. And the act of slowing down your brain waves all of a sudden causes different compartments of your brain that were incoherent, because the hormones of stress are saying, what about this? What about that? What about this person? What about that appointment? You start suppressing neocortical function. Here comes innate intelligence. Here comes the autonomic nervous system. And now they begin to merge. And the autonomic nervous system's job is to do what? Create balance. So it says, this person is getting beyond their identity. And when the autonomic nervous system moves in, the brain neocortex starts to synchronize. And what syncs in the brain starts to link in the brain. And now what we see is the autonomic nervous system, when it's done properly, it turns on, Ron, to such a heightened degree of energy. We're talking 200, 300, 400, 500 standard deviations outside of normal. That's how much energy is in there. And I'll give you an example about standard deviations. If we took everybody on who's listening to this call and we measured their eyesight as an example, you would see that Z curve exactly the same. No matter what we measured, intelligence, eyesight, height, weight, you'd see the same curve. And that big part of the curve, if you draw a line right down the middle, that's normal. That makes up about 68% of the population. A little better eyesight, a little worse eyesight, but it's kind of normal. Then the curve drops down and you have about 12% here, 12% here, a little better eyesight, a little worse eyesight. Then it gets down to the bottom. And you got 2% really great eyesight, 2% really poor eyesight. That makes up 99.7% of the population. Is either 3 standard deviations above normal or 3 standard deviations below normal, no matter what we measure. Now, we're getting brainwave patterns with energy in an aroused state of gamma. That's 200, 300, 400, 500 times outside of normal. Now, when neuroscientists and researchers look at this, and it's all autonomic nervous system. So now the autonomic nervous system's processing a very coherent, very orderly, very high frequency, and the autonomic nervous system controls and coordinates all those systems. So the person, all of a sudden, the arousal that they're feeling is an arousal of ecstasy. It's an arousal of bliss. They're connecting with innate, and its signature is pure love. I mean, or wholeness, whatever you want to call it, or ecstasy, a feeling that moves you into the present moment. Now, when that happens, the feeling's not coming from anything outside of them. It's coming from within them. And they stop looking out there for it. And they start realizing that innate intelligence is real within them. So then when they start becoming conscious and interfacing with it, the side effect of that, many times, is an instantaneous biological upgrade. The person all of a sudden, why? Because that orderly signal, coherent signal that's being sent to every single cell in the body is jiggling the cell with energy, and the cell begins to emit more light and information. And now all of a sudden, the body begins to produce a field. And according to the quantum model of reality, all disease is a lowering of frequency. You're becoming more matter, less energy. So now here we go. There's an upgrade energetically that happens in real time. And so the person comes back and says, I don't know what that was, but let me tell you something. It was more real than the betrayal I had 6 years ago, or more real than the trauma I had when I was 9. This is a moment where they're having a very, very profound removal of the past biologically.
So when someone falls in love, right? And hopefully most of our viewers had that instance where they fell in love, right? And they had that feeling that was there. That, I mean, everything else just kind of you're so present, you're so right there, right? It sounds like, on some level that's the same thing, right? You've upgraded, right? You've up-leveled yourself, and it doesn't have to take searching 1,000 miles for, and lying on Freud's couch for 20,000 years to get to that point. Sure.
Well, it's a great conversation, because what we found in a very indirect way, as you get closer and closer to the expression of innate intelligence through your nervous system, through your body, and I say that's my definition of health. My definition of health is the expression of coherent energy through your nervous system. And as you get closer and closer to innate, it tends to be more and more love. You tend to feel more elevated in your heart. And once energy makes it to the heart, our research says it goes 2 ways. First way, straight to the brain. That's because we see it on functional brain scans every time. The second thing that happens is the heart becomes orderly. It begins to emit a field that can be measured that's magnetic up to 3 meters wide. Now the body is connected. It's not feeling separate. It's feeling very connected. And when you feel that emotion, you would never look for your future. Why would you look for your future if you feel like it's already happening? There's no place to look. You're not separated from it. Now, something kind of phenomenological happens that's really weird. Because when we create things from matter to matter, we got to drag our body through space and go get it. and we're going to estimate how long it's going to take, 2 years, 5 years to buy the house, the car, the boat, whatever. That's matter trying to influence matter. And when it doesn't work, you force outcomes, you control outcomes, you manipulate outcomes, you fight for them, you compete for them, because that's what you do when you're matter trying to affect matter. But once energy makes it to the heart and the body's emitting a field, and the heart makes you feel connected, the brain becomes more creative, it goes into alpha states. Now all of a sudden, you have a Wi-Fi signal. The brain's coherent, the heart's coherent, and now the inverse is true. Now you start seeing synchronicities, coincidences, opportunities coming to you. Like you're not going anywhere to get them, you're the magnet. And so then doing the work, people come to heal, they come for wealth, they come for new relationships, they come for a new life, but really what they're coming for is wholeness. Yeah. So then what we see is when people start to connect, there is a tremendous release of oxytocin in the brain and body. And oxytocin is the love chemical. But now, it's not coming from a relationship. It's coming from your relationship with innate. It's coming with your relationship with a future vision, that you're falling in love, bonding with your future, just like you would bond and fall in love with somebody else. Now, oxytocin signals nitric oxide. And nitric oxide signals a chemical called endothelial-derived relaxing factor. And what does that do? It signals the vessels in the heart and the lungs to actually expand. Now, here comes a lot of blood flow, a lot of energy right into your heart, and you're going to physiologically feel your heart feeling full. And now, when that happens, all of a sudden, there's only one thing you want to do, and that's give, because you feel so amazing. You go from the selfish state of the stress hormones to a selfless state. Yeah. And what you're saying really is, I just want you to feel the way I feel. And the only way that I can express how I feel is to give to you. Now, that's what love does, right? That's what gratitude does. We did an experiment. We took 120 people. We measured their cortisol levels and we measured their IgA levels. Immunoglobulin A, your body's primary defense against bacteria and viruses. It is better than any flu shot. It is the body's innate flu shot. Turns out, as cortisol levels go up, the immune system goes down. Why? Throwing out all this energy for some threat in your outer environment, no energy in your inner environment for growth and repair. So the immune system downregulates. So we said, okay, we measured the cortisol levels, we measured their IgA levels. We said, for 4 days, let's get heart-centered. We'll put a heart rate monitor on you. We'll measure when you're coherent. And let's get you into feeling gratitude. Now, the emotional signature of gratitude, when you're receiving something, when you just receive something that's favorable, when something amazing is happening to you, or something surprising or amazing just happened to you, you feel gratitude and you say, I thank you, thank you. So the emotional signature of gratitude means something just happened. Right. Something favorable just happened. Now, your body's so objective that when you feel gratitude, it can't tell the difference between something that you're getting from your outer world or just by fabricating it by thought alone. So then when the body moves into that elevated state of emotion, it switches down the sympathetic nervous system. Here comes the parasympathetic nervous system, and now there's energy for growth and repair. So in 4 days, IgA levels went up 50% just by feeling gratitude. Now, the worst thing that could happen to you by being grateful for things in your life or things that are going to happen in your life is that you're going to heal. That's the worst thing that could happen to you. So the researchers that study my work, they say, listen, your oxytocin levels on your students are really high in 4 days or 7 days. I mean, oxytocin levels are normally high when female mammals are bonding with their offspring, or you're in that honeymoon stage of a relationship and it creates monogamy and connection and bonding, and that's really the way it should be. But now they're saying to me, what are you doing at your events? I mean, well, I said, because I want them to be in love with their future, just like they're in love with somebody else. And you're bonded to that future, and no person, no circumstance, no condition in your environment is going to remove you from it. And that's when people practice this, the cool thing about it is that once they understand the formula, they know how to do it. It's not like, oh God, I got to go meditate today on creating a new life. It's not like that. They're up and they want to go. Why? Because they don't want the magic to end. They don't want those synchronicities to end. And now the universal intelligence, that is that quantum field, that is that unifying field, that is source, it is singularity, it's the 0 point field. That is when you are if you are connected to source or universal intelligence, why would you go anywhere to get anything? Right. You wouldn't have to. So then I'm always amazed with chiropractors because they talk innate intelligence. They talk about it, but they make very little effort to connect with it. And I'm telling you, when you have that arousal and you experience it, you're going to know that it's absolutely real, and you will speak with a different level of authority. And removing subluxations in the nervous system allows the expression of that intelligence, and teaching people how to stay resilient emotionally. But stay in that boundary.
It amplifies it. I mean,
exactly.
Because what we do, as chiropractors, is when we remove interference, but we don't do the healing. We know that, right?
Exactly.
But it allows that frequency level to increase. And you said something that was really brilliant. Everything you're saying is brilliant, by the way. I love everything you're saying. You talked about, that looking into your future, right? But it's also being present. And so what I heard was, when we want to live for our future, but we can't be over there because then we're outside of our innate mind, right? Whereas we're present, because what I'm getting, at least from our conversation, is it's about being present. It's about being right here from the inside out, right?
Right. Oh, so that's brilliant. And in fact, that's the way it is. So I describe reality as past present reality and future present reality. So when you combine a clear intention, coherent brain, with an elevated emotion, a coherent heart, the stronger the emotion you feel for your future, the more altered you are inside of you, the more you're going to pay attention to the picture in your mind, and you're going to begin to emboss that circuitry. You're going to start remembering your future. Why? Because the stronger the emotion you feel from some event in your past, the more altered you feel inside of you, the more you narrow your focus on the cause, and the brain freezes a frame and takes a snapshot, and that's called a long-term memory. So then when a person starts combining that clear intention with an elevated emotion, and they're truly in the present moment, and they're not distracted by anything in their environment, they're not distracted by the emotions of the past or the habits of the future, they're not trying to predict the future or the past, they're in the present moment. If thoughts are the vocabulary of the brain and feelings are the vocabulary of your body, and how you think and how you feel creates your state of being, then that person, when they feel the emotion of their future and they're paying attention to their intention, they are in that future in the present moment. And in the present moment is where things begin to happen. Yeah. So then it works really great in the meditation, but the game changes when you open your eyes and you come back to your senses. And if you say to me, hey, I was doing really great, then 12 o'clock I had this text from my brother or my cousin or whatever, and I'm upset, then I'd say to you, oh my God, you're back to the unconscious program of being a victim in your environment. So then when you can open your eyes and become so familiar with those states of mind and body, that as long as you feel the emotion of your future, or better yet, as long as there's a vibrational match between the energy of who you are and your future, you're going to see feedback in your environment. So the person's experiencing the future in the present moment when they do it properly. Then when they get up, if they've done it enough times, no person, no circumstance, no thing, no condition in their environment will be in the way, because they're not creating matter to matter. They're creating from the field. And Einstein said, the field is the governing agency of the particle. And it's not matter that's emitting a field. That's the illusion. It's the field that's creating matter. Change the field, you change matter. And just getting to that point where you can dissociate from your body, from the people in your life, from yourself, from the things you own, the place you need to be, the place you sleep, the place you work, your clinic, where it is. And time itself causes your consciousness to begin to merge with the consciousness of the unified or of universal intelligence. And now, all of a sudden, things start happening for you. And it just kind of gets a little bit exciting, because you start realizing that you may have had the game all wrong from the start. So yeah, absolutely. It is the future in the now.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. Joe, you've got such amazing information. I mean, man, my mind is, listen, the log above me, I've been holding that up the whole time because I've been so present with you, my brother, that it's effortless. In fact, my head doesn't even hurt. It's so cool. I'll lift it up in a second. No, seriously, I love what you're saying. And I know go on and on and on, and it's just beautiful. A question I have, because I know the listeners are probably thinking the same thing, or the viewers actually. what can they do? Like, you know, where's the next step? And the chiropractors in particular, because you mentioned how, you know, we talk innate intelligence, but we don't necessarily delve into it. And how, you know, get a few things, and then we'll kind of come to a close.
Well, look, I mean, knowledge is the precursor to experience. I mean, the more knowledge you have, the more you can apply what you've learned. So, I mean, chiropractors have always been ahead of the curve when it comes to understanding the vitalistic role of really how the body truly functions. Information biology, whatever you want to call it, says that it's not particles with charges doing the work. There's a field around the cell that's very orderly and coherent. So if we can, as a culture of professionals, learn how to tell the truth, based on knowledge and science and information, and educate our patients to such a degree that they're not going to be so afraid of any foreign agent out there. Not to say that they can't practice all the right things, but let's tell the truth. I mean, your body's fighting viruses and bacteria right now. Right. And your thymus gland sits right in front of your heart, and it wants to make thymosin, which is going to regulate B cells and T cells to make antibodies to protect you from viruses and bacteria. You'll be less of a victim to your environment. So get the information, learn the right information, educate your patients so that they have a place to go. Practice what you preach to such a degree that you understand that it's not that easy. It takes practice getting beyond yourself. Once you do that, then once you're providing the proper type of care, step outside of convention and document and show how people heal from the work that we do. I mean, miracles happen in chiropractic offices every single day. I don't know why someone hasn't created some type of consortium with a person and telling their story with a testimonial, and then having that person be in a database of thousands of people that are responding to the corrections in their nervous system, align as a community, and forget about all the things. I mean, the hardest part about chiropractic to me is it's so simple. Everything else is just extraneous, a lot of extra work. So get involved in the game as well. Get involved in refining who you are. Get involved in getting your message very clear and very concise. Educate people. I mean, if a person shows up in your office 6 months later with the same exact problem they had 6 months ago and they ask you why, tell them the truth. The truth is that you're thinking the same way. You're acting the same way. You're feeling the same way. You're back to your old personality and your personal reality. Your environment is controlling you. And now you're back to the same pattern structurally. There's got to be some participation on your part. So make it easy for them to want to try it out and make it fun and teach them how to do it. And you take care of their emotional component. I mean, my theory in a chiropractic office is walk in feeling one way and walk out feeling another way. That's it. That's all you have to do, and you'll be the busiest chiropractor in the world. Why? Because people are going to want to feel like that when they don't feel like that. And providing the proper care, master your technique, master your language, do all the things you need to do, keep your staff inspired. Make sure when you start your day, your staff is clear that everybody gets well. Everybody is raising to your frequency or energy, and if you're losing it, don't walk in that room until you're back into coherence, back into self-regulating. That, to me, is being present with your patients.
Yeah, and that's also about, like you talked about, if you get your staff, you get everybody, when that office is vibrating at that level, and we'll call it a healing level, right, the coherent level, man, people just get sucked in, people walk out, they don't even know why they come. And Joe, I know you've been practicing for, 30 plus years, right? Whatever, it's more than that. You're going to be coming up on 40 years in another 3 years, whatever. But there's people, they get it, they don't get it here, but they get it, right?
Yeah.
And what I heard you just say was get out of your head. And when you get out of your head, you actually go into your innate mind.
Sure. And that means then you got to be really, really proficient at what you do.
Yeah.
And that means that you can't get caught in doing the same thing. You can't get caught in routine. You gotta want to be challenged. You got to think outside the box. You got to modify your adjustments if the person's not responding. You can't just say it's the patient's fault that they're not getting better. You got to be equally as refined in your craft as well, and tell them the truth.
right.
I mean, tell them the truth and watch how they respond, because there's so much fear right now in the world, and that's exactly what's weakening people's immune systems. And they're suggestible to information equal to their emotional state. We only accept, believe, and surrender to information equal to our emotional state. Change a person's emotional state, change their energy. And by the way, nobody changes until they change their energy. And I guarantee you, they're not going to believe the same information because they're not viewing their future through the lens of the past. The emotion is the lens of the past. Now, yeah, that's a risk for a lot of people, but if you teach them the tools on how to do it, you can't tell me you're too old to do this. You can't tell me you're too young. You can't tell me you're too sick. You can't tell me you had a brutal past. You can't tell me you're out of shape. You can't tell me any of that anymore. You can't even tell me that you've never meditated before. And sometimes those people do the best because they're not in a habit. Just if you are going to preach innate intelligence, this self-governing intelligence that's doing its best to express itself through us, take a little time every day. Just a little bit of time and get quiet, get beyond your environment, get beyond your body, get beyond time, and just surrender and connect and see what comes out of you the rest of the day. I guarantee you'll impress yourself.
and then they'll see it, they'll feel it, they'll be it, right? It's exactly it.
Exactly.
Joe, I love you, man. Thank you so much. I mean, just thank you. My mind is... it's just great. Viewers, for our listeners, they can get to you by drjoedispenza.com. Is that right? They can see your book, hear your books. You got tapes, you got all kinds of things, meditations and things
courses,
like that.
Everything. Yeah.
And then for our chiropractic, we have a lot of viewers who are non-chiropractors, but for our chiropractic viewers, just to kind of hone in, because everything you talk about really comes from that base of where not where you started, but where one of your core fundamentals is being a chiropractor, right? Doing that, though you don't practice anymore, but practice for many years. Dude, incredible stuff. So thank you. I appreciate you. Final words you'd like to say? No,
I mean, I'm just I'm happy to contribute as always.
Joe, and you are a giver, and that's really what it's about, and thank you for being so gracious. To our, I don't want to say goodbye, dude. I'm having so much fun. But I will. To our viewers, thank you so much for listening. I think you're going to have to play this about 4 or 5 times just to get to the first level. And then when you get to about the 10th time listening to this, it'll start sinking in. I'm trying to take mental notes, and I'll be going back and going back and going back. But thank you for listening. Remember to live your life from above down, inside out. Keep resonating at the highest level you possibly can, and do the things like Dr. Joe said. Do the things that you need to do. Don't get lazy. We got to keep working, keep becoming the best that we can be for what our potential is, right? And we can do that best by being as clear as we can possibly be on the inside and coming from a place of gratitude. So I love and appreciate you all. We'll see you at our next leadership line. Joe, thank you so much for blowing minds and for dropping pearls of wisdom. And for everybody else, we'll see you next time on the leadership line.